everybody? It is me. It is the Cyber Warrior. This is Cyber Warrior Studios, and I know what you're all here for. You're all here for another amazing episode of Security Happy Hour. But here's the deal. You've got to like, share, comment, subscribe, all those fun things. You got to get the word out there about us so that we can keep spreading the word, keep helping people out, and keep getting people into cybersecurity, because that's what this is all about, right? It's all about bringing new people into the industry. No matter what your level is when you come on as a guest, we want you to spread the word. We want to help others out. That's the whole goal. Now, we're going to give a lot of information today, especially about Maritime Cyber, and Brad Proctor is going to be our guest. So if you hang with me for about 10 seconds, and in that 10 seconds, please share this episode. I promise we'll be right back. And I'm back. See, 10 seconds is all it takes. And with me this evening, I have a returning guest, and it's been a while since I've had him on the show, so it is good to have him back. And we have some very important topics to discuss with Maritime Cyber. But without further ado, the one, the only, Brad Proctor. How you doing this evening, brother?
I'm doing good. What's up, man?
You know, it's been a rough week. It's been a rough week, but I'm doing good. I mean, that's I kind of just go about things as I can, everything day by day. Cybersecurity is always changing, always different, and there's always something new to learn. Plus, with family and all that other shit that I got going on in my life, it is what it is. But saying that, it's been probably over a year since I've had you on this show. The beard is looking luxurious, not as good as mine, but you're getting there. All right, we'll get you there eventually.
I go back and forth where I'll shave it, I'll let it get long, and then there's always something there.
Dude, I'm the same way. As long as I have a beard, I'm good. But when I'm like, it's too short, I need let it grow. Mine just doesn't grow like yours, though. Like I have to keep mine groomed, or the wife gets mad.
There's no shave November, which is just amateur beard month, right? That's what we should call it. And then you just run over into December, and it's just be a hippie, and it's no deodorant December, and we'll just keep it at
that. There you go. But anywho, man, you're in Maritime Cyber, and that's the big topic of the day. But how did you get into that? Like, was it you applied for a job and decided to do it, or was it just kind of like you were interested in it and decided to look for that type of job?
Yeah. So anytime I talk about this, it's always fun because I am not a mariner, never was a sailor. So what actually happened is I work for the company I work for. We do a lot in the maritime sector as well as the defense sector. And I got drug into this project. And this particular project was for a first of class ship that was being built here in the U.S. First one's been built. And they were going to get this ship commercially. Actually, it had to get a government ATO. It was not Navy, was not actually going to connect to anything, really. And it had to get an ATO, and so went through that process. And we had to figure out how to get or to do remote operations for both a NOC and a SOC over satellite communication, which is not easy.
I've worked SATCOM. That's definitely not something that works well.
So yeah, that I kind of fell into it, and realized that it's a huge need, and it's kind of become it's been fun. It's been fun to be part of that particular project, and then carry it on through to other clients too.
So you're kind of like living in the maritime world now, though. Like the whole concept of, you know, ocean cyber and sea and things like that kind of consumes what you do for the most part these days. Am I wrong?
A good part of it. It's not everything that I do, but it's especially last year. It was a big part of the project. That project we worked on, and then we came up with how to actually do it, which was fun. And then we actually got to speak at Defcon31 about sharing what we learned during that process. So that was a cool experience.
Do you find the biggest hindrance beyond money, right? We always know money is going to be a hindrance to cybersecurity, IT, and kind of what we do. But beyond that, as far as technology and tech stack, is the satellite realm, are we still not at a point where it is effectively communicating and transmitting the information we need at a speed we need to adequately protect everything we have, in the ocean. You're looking at all these boats. You're looking at, whether it's Coast Guard, Navy, merchant vessels, you name it. Are we able to adequately protect them with what we currently have in this space?
So when we were first given this problem, right, of how do we do this over really low bandwidth, high latency connection, right? We were given that. Like, how do you do that, right? Nowadays, thankfully, it's getting better, right? Low Earth orbit, such as Starlink, right, has changed the game from a maritime perspective. But you're not always guaranteed that, right? There's so many vessels out there, and many of the vessels are not equipped yet with Starlink. So you can't just say, "Hey, to do this, we must have Starlink," and then you're missing all these vessels.
Right.
When you look at it, if you're getting logs off a ship, right? If you're going to, the most way people do it now, they collect the logs while they're underway, right? Nothing changes while underway. They get back in home port and they start to investigate whatever potentially happened, right? That's not ideal. The underway is its most vulnerable state. And so basically what we decided to do is you could either put a SIM fully on the ship and then put a person there. That's also expensive, right? Or you shoot all of that over SATCOM. That's extremely expensive. Is you basically go to we ended up going to a kind of a hybrid model where we put a SIM on the ship, right? Collecting everything, doing everything there on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
We're using Elastic to do this. We're using a cross-cluster replication, basically to only pull those highs and those criticals back to a shoreside copy of it. So your analysts are looking at it from a shoreside SIM and can dive back into the ship while underway if they need to.
So have you found with that model, right? And again, so this is very interesting to me because when you're looking at a ship, right, we're not like talking submarine. If somebody can do something to a ship, that means we have bigger problems. I mean, somebody has the range, the radius, the capability to hit something out at sea, out in the ocean, out wherever. Have you found that can be problematic to even stop, right? So you can do the sim, you can do this cross cluster, you can bring all the data back, but how do you isolate those systems in enough time to really kind of do the IR and incident handling and things of that nature when that just to get that over to the satellite or over wherever, like, hey, stop this right now. Like, does it happen immediately, or is there so much latency even with low Earth orbit to really accomplish that and do what we do on a day-to-day basis from cloud and everything else right now?
So you've got two different sides of it, right? So you've got the OT side of it, right, where that's most of where the ship systems are going to be operating. And the most common way to set that up is to air gap the OT systems. Right. That is the most common way to do that. Or you follow the Purdue model and you have a really clear separation between all of the OT assets and your IT assets. What's happening in these smaller merchant vessels is they are starting to converge those together. And it's because it can happen, not because it should happen. Right. And a lot of it comes down to budget reasons. They're like, well, we just bought this equipment. Why can't we do this? Right? Why can't we connect this? And there was actually a fascinating talk at Defcon. It just happened to be 2 talks before ours. And the title was, "I am the captain now." And it was right, scary concept. And the entire concept, and it actually wasn't a concept, this individual job was to pen test ships. And he told us a story that basically where someone had segmented it out, that he was able to get to this particular asset before it authenticated to the rest of the network. He got to this asset, compromised it. Then once it joined, he was already on it. And then he was able to get to the point where he could actually have control of the ship's engine.
Yeah, I would say he's the captain now. He runs the show. That's always, so when we think about whether it's maritime, automobiles, anything that can be in motion, and provides transportation of one way or another, whether it's shipment, cargo, actual people, you name it. That's always been an issue of mine, is we are implementing so much of computers and technology and internet and interconnectivity in these. Do you feel in your heart, now I know there's only so much you could probably say, but as much as you can say, do you think it's a benefit or a detriment?
The part, it can be a benefit, and I think that the industry's going in the right direction. But it's not going to be easy, because you've got ships that are outdated that are still going to be used. It's just the nature of what this industry is. And then you also, it's not just ships, or you got ports, right? The marine transportation system is a system of systems, right? You've got ports, you have inner waterways, you have the ships themselves, you have all of the tracking and logistics that happen, you have the actual intermodal transportation of, hey, we can have a container that is in a factory. That same container can move from a factory all the way to a dock, right? In the same container. It's all connected together. And so it's multiple vulnerabilities that exist that could disrupt our way of life. And right, and we were talking about it before the show, right? During COVID, I think all of us potentially realized that, oh wow, shipping's important. I didn't get my furniture for a year and a half.
I mean, when you import everything, that kind of happens, and I think that's a nation issue, not a shipping issue. Kind of both, but when you import everything, that is definitely an issue that you're going to have when you can't get shit off a ship. That's a problem.
Yeah. So there's that, and there's the if you look at it as they're all vulnerabilities, right? They all potentially possess some vulnerability that can disrupt the economies, or you name it.
Yeah.
If you think back to the ship, the Evergreen, that got stuck in the canal and blocked 396 ships, costing an estimated $9.6 billion in damage during that time, right? One ship. And so it's one of those things that you have to kind of look at and really understand that it's a massive issue, and our ports are extremely vulnerable.
And I think that when we look at maritime, so do you feel there's enough people that are working to support maritime cyber, that are working to kind of break into that industry, or do you feel like it's something that is still kind of not really looked at as vital and as a vital part of what we do?
If you had asked me last week, I would have said that there wasn't enough attention on it from a overarching perspective. And it's kind of interesting, when I submitted this, and then this week, there was an executive order that was put out about maritime cyber specifically. So while that doesn't immediately draw attention to it, it at least brings it to the surface and awareness of that there's a problem.
Yeah.
And so I think I would say now that, yeah, people are paying attention, that where they potentially were not as much before.
Yeah, and even with that, let's be honest, I think it is something that I would love to see on LinkedIn. I have not seen that. Like when CMMC 2.0 was coming out, I saw that all over LinkedIn. When the new executive order, or whatever it was that came out, a few months ago, if not last year sometime, about cybersecurity, that came out. I have not seen a single post about this executive order, about this maritime. We need to pay attention to it. So even in the realm of cybersecurity, it is not being publicized that this is important. So to your point, yes, something is being said and done higher up, but us in the industry are not sharing that information in such a way that everybody can see it and knows it's important. And so I think that is where we can come together and collectively as a community really start publicizing why this is important, how it's important, and how we can improve it. And I think that's where people like yourself and others in that maritime industry should really start pushing that forward of, look, if you don't have X, Y, and Z or if this ship breaks down, or if this happens, you're screwed. I'm sorry. It's going to cost your company billions of dollars. It's going to cost people billions of dollars, because overall, they're not going to get their shit, and they're like, you know what? Cancel my order. Just cancel it. I'm done. I don't want to deal with you no more, because you can't get shit to me on time. So screw it. I'm out.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the big part there is that also you've got people, right? It's a safety issue too. And I say a comment of about as bad as SCADA systems. Well, you've got on most ships, right? You're going to have your actual physical nexus of it, where things are actually occurring, right? You could be a pump, right, or a ballasting portion of it. And then next to that, you're going to have a PLC, right? A PLC that's going to be actually doing that. After that, the next layer you normally see is your HMIs, where you have your human machine interface, where a human's actually interacting and looking at what actually is occurring, right? That's what you normally refer to as SCADA in that case. And that's where a ship has a lot of that, right? A ship's basically kind of like a floating office or a floating thing. It has to have everything on it, right? So yeah, it's pretty bad. And the OT side of it does have standards they're supposed to follow, but the IT side at the moment it's kind of the wild west.
So these days, now how much do you deal with? So you deal a lot with maritime, but you also have other industries and other sectors that you're involved in your current position. Where would you put the onus of worst right now in terms of securing? I don't know how much you deal with critical infrastructure, but we'll say with your research and things that you've done, you're at the same level I am. We kind of do the same research on where we need to protect. Where would you say the worst is for critical infrastructure? And that includes maritime, to keep the United States, to keep even countries all over the world. Like, where are we having the biggest issues?
Everywhere.
In terms of like, so owned mentioned SCADA. We know OT is a huge problem. I have a different concept of where we're at the worst security, but I would love to hear from a critical infrastructure standpoint where you think the shit could hit the fan and we're screwed in a matter of seconds. In a matter of seconds, it would be over. Where do you think we have the worst vulnerabilities?
As far as immediate impact, it's going to be utilities. That's the immediate impact for us as a nation, right? Immediate human impact. If someone wanted to do something, you're going to impact humans immediately at that point, right? If we talk about supply chains and we get into the defense industry, it's all about the supply chain, right? That's going to take some time, right? We don't know exactly how quickly that would actually occur, if it did. But if a nation state wanted to make a huge impact on our nation, it could be any critical infrastructure, utility specifically, to cause mass disruption and potentially mass casualties.
So you're not wrong. Utilities definitely huge, especially power. And honestly, I think from a concept of what is most vulnerable, I think power is probably up there, with all of the different companies. I don't care who they are. But for me, and I think it's because I think it's critical, but it's not maybe considered critical infrastructure, I would say hospitals. Only because a lot of your hospitals, when they buy equipment, right? So we think of power companies and things like that. Oh, we have X, Y, and Z, and it's going to be secured for or patched or updated, da 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 da, for X amount of years. And a lot of those companies stay in business, right? That are going to patch and update these systems. But when you look at hospitals, it is so fluctuating, where you see MRI machines, X-ray machines, your EKGs, your everything within the medical industry is constantly going in and out of business, to where they quit getting updates, they quit doing this. But hey, we're gonna put this wireless sensor in your chest for a heart monitor or whatever to keep your heart beating. And I'm not a doctor, but I know these things are done to where, oh, you can monitor it over your phone, but don't worry, we got a company that's going to keep that software updated for the next 20 years, and then 2 years later they're out of business. So for me, as far as critical, I think it's hospitals. I've seen too many go down and too many people die because a hospital got owned. You put a power company out, hospitals have generators, they'll keep them up and running for a little bit. Yes, a power company is going to go down and it's going to affect a lot more people, but those that know how to live and, oh, I'll just turn on my gas-powered stove, not electric, gas, let's be honest, to provide heat. I'll start a fire. I'll go outside and tent and all these other things. I think without power, you can go. But without the medical industry, now we have issues. Now we have serious problems because who's going to do surgery? Who's going to do, diagnostics? Who's going to be that person? Maritime, that is all, as much as I think it's vital and necessary in more ways than just shipping, right? We look at our power. A lot of our power comes from hydro. Look at the Hoover Dam, which provides how much power to whatever. Maritime as a whole, whether it's shipping, naval, war, whatever. Maritime as a whole is huge. But I think, personally, the medical industry is getting hit harder than everything else right now and more vulnerable.
I don't disagree.
I want more people to get to maritime. I'm just looking at it from a criticality standpoint. I think hospitals are screwed, and it's not because of cyber. It's not because of IT. It's because of these companies that are selling shit and be like, we're going to be around forever. And so hospitals spend billions of dollars, and then 5 years later, they're not getting updates, and they're shit out of luck. Whereas maritime has a lot of government that can get behind them. They can help produce more money. They can help take things further and be like, oh no, you can rebuild all this. We'll provide all this. Same with power and energy and all that other stuff. Hospitals are mostly private sector in the U.S. and they're fucked. Like, if they can't get the money, they're fucked.
Most of our critical infrastructure is private sector, if not all.
Don't tell everybody that. We know this.
You want to know something that's not critical infrastructure at the moment?
What?
Space. Space assets are not considered critical infrastructure.
And you know that space, they're trying to go back to the moon again.
I'm very aware.
Once wasn't enough. Let's fucking do it again. Why not?
I live in Rocket City. I'm very aware that we're trying to get back to the moon.
Space Taco says she loves the octopus art behind your head, by the way.
Yeah, that is over there. That was actually the artwork we had on our for our talk at Defcon. So it's pretty cool.
So let's talk about that. So, well, I gotta grab something real quick, but talk about your Defcon talk and let people know, kind of, without giving away the entire talk, because they can find it online and should watch it on YouTube just like you're watching the show. But talk about that. Kind of, what was your talk about, and how do you think it can influence the industry going forward?
So yeah, it was all on the premise of kind of what I started talking about at the beginning. It was based off a project that we were given, and we were helping a government-owned ship get an ATO with commercial off-the-shelf equipment and services. First-to-class ship, and we had to go through and basically figure out how to do SOC knock remotely while it was underway. And so it was how we came up with the requirements without actually seeing it, right? All we were looking at is blueprints, talking through and figuring out how we take a IT-based framework that doesn't really take into account OT, and how do we take those assets that kind of bridge that gap between what is OT and what is IT, and how do we apply certain controls? And we came up with this clustering idea, right? And we talked about that in the talk. Talked about how we did that and where we figured out how things were going to apply and where they're going to apply. The one thing that we had to figure out, and we shared about is MFA, right? How do you do MFA over high latency? Everyone's like, oh, you could just push it with an app. No, you can't. If the latency is high enough, the token expires before you actually get it.
Yeah, you got what, 30 seconds to a minute? I think minutes the longest I've seen.
So we talked about how we dealt with that. We had a bunch of executive orders for MFA and what was required that we had to make sure we implemented. We talked about the building a network in a shipyard, which is not easy.
Now, did that network talk to the ships?
No, this was the network being built on the ship in the shipyard.
So it was a ship-based network. So yeah, homie, you did a lot.
You got you dealing with shipyard things where they lose power, right? Someone decides they're going to clean something and they go turn a breaker off and you lose power out of the all IT rooms. They decide that they're going to do inclining that day and you can't go on the ship because the ship's incline. And yeah, it's not ideal. But yeah, we did it.
So with everything you've done, right? So you've got this talk, you've got Maritime Cyber. There's so much to it, so much that goes on in our oceans and our seas with what we operate on and what matters. And we are, as much as I bitch and complain, and people know I will talk shit about cybersecurity all day, and the fact that a lot of companies, a lot of organizations don't give a fuck about it is just checking the box to them. Everybody who knows me knows I will say this, but at the end of the day, for us, it's our life, it's our livelihood. It is what matters to us is protecting industry, protecting people, protecting data, because it's vital, right, to us as a society, especially these days. Do you feel that enough attention is being given to maritime cyber?
I don't think so.
I'm not talking about the executive order. I'm talking in general. Do you think enough attention is being brought to it?
In general, no. And after the DEFCON talk, so we were in the ICS village. So, and then a break off from that village is the Maritime ICS village, which used to be called Hack the Sea. So when you get into that much of a group of people that understand it, yeah, they get it, right? That's what they do. But if you step outside of that, everyone's like, I never thought about that. I've given the same talk, kind of a pared down version at multiple B-sides. I've given it at a local DEFCON chapter talk. And every time I have to start with, why maritime? Why is this even a thing? So the fact that I have to do that and explain it, yeah, no one knows.
Do you feel that it should be at least, and I got a buddy, he was on the show recently, Ryan, do you think that we should put kind of like the shipping security and the stuff that's operated on it at the same level right now that they're putting automotive? So automotive is getting put on this pedestal. We need to secure this with all the AI, with all the other BS, with, da-da-da-da. Do you think we should be doing the same thing with maritime cyber, and that these shipping containers, that the merchant vessels, the naval vessels, all this other stuff, should be putting it on the same level or higher than what it currently is?
I think it needs to be elevated. I would not say that there's going to be some things that are obviously more important, but it doesn't need to be ignored. And the other thing to remember, again, it's private industry, right? So it's the only way to do it in most cases, unfortunately, is regulation, because we found out they're not going to do it if you just tell them to do it. You have to force them to do it. And they're not going to spend the money on it because this is the way it's going to be. And it's what we've seen happen. And also it's culture too. In the maritime culture of, hey, we're at sea, no one's going to bother us. Like there's some people get it, right? Some people that have done that, and it's a changing of culture in that industry that it's going to take as well. Not just, hey, you must do this, because then they're just going to get to the checkbox mentality and say, yeah, we're doing it, right? We wrote a procedure to do this and never do it.
Yeah, it's one of those things that even I've never thought about, but it's more to the point of you should be doing this, but I think that's my issue all around, right? As a security professional, I feel like people should be doing certain things that they're just not doing. But I never thought about the implications of the latency to and just bandwidth in general and everything like that, of how hard from a shipping perspective and being out at sea that it really would be to secure your shit. Because how, unless you're, let's just say, patching, if you're patching everything, the latency alone would set you back probably a week for the number of patches that come out from Microsoft alone. And that's not even counting testing. That's just download. That's just grabbing it, putting it on your server so you can distribute it to your systems. So I think from that perspective, man, that does set us back quite a way. And I think it's sad, because then you look at it at that point, most companies, most organizations that have regular downloads that are getting them on time, the same day, like, we're going to bring this patch down, we're going to test it, deploy it within a week. You're not even getting your patches till who knows when, depending on your download speed over to SatLink. Man, it's rough. It's so bad. And now if you're all pulling from the same satellite, it's even worse, because maybe, so Jack put, what do we do when a whole bunch of ships at anchor suddenly list 30 degrees to one side? Like, that means somebody owns the entire network, or just even if the oceans move, you can't, like, how do you address all these things? And I just think as a whole, it plays a bigger role than we're willing to admit. And this is why I think there are certain vehicles and certain industries where IT, cybersecurity, and technology does not belong. Me personally, I think it doesn't belong.
Yeah, so there's this to do that, if you had all of them, right? You either have to, if each ship is independent, right, you have to own each ship, right? That would be a little bit harder to do than a very common thing that you're seeing, especially in the commercial side of the maritime industry, is wanting to be able to see how there's a particular system called CAMS, right? And it allows you to see externally, shoreside, your fleet, right? And see how much fuel you're using, if you're underway, things of that nature. And it can allow you to do certain things, right? That's a pretty massive vulnerability if you have that and you can access that and access the entire fleet. Because then it's one point of entry to the rest of the fleet versus owning each ship individually.
Yeah, and I've always had an issue with that. Look at and again, I'm going to bring this back because I don't know maritime as well as you do, to the vehicular industry, where there are certain servers, GM, Ford, things like that, that if you own, you can gain insight and access to all of the vehicles of that brand, of that ability. So yeah, that could pose a fucking problem. If I can see all your ships and control, hey, you're burning this much gas when really you're not, but we're gonna say you are. So now you're gonna do what I want. And I look at it more from a social engineering perspective. If you're told you have half the fuel you really do, you're going to come back to port or find a port and just go there to refuel. If you're told, hey, you have more fuel than you really do, you're going to be stranded out at sea. So there is so much that can be done just from a control perspective of those. Without controlling the actual boat itself, you can make those on board think they have or don't have whatever.
And then you've got other systems, and you're talking about where the ships are located, right? Anyone can go look at marine. There's websites for like OSINT, right? Every ship over a certain size has to use AIS, and AIS is basically saying, here's where we are in the world, right? So it has to broadcast that and what its flag is. You can spoof that, right? There are ways, and there was actually a demo at DEFCON of someone's doing an AI spoofing, and you're like, well, why would I care if I wanted to know where a ship was? Think about that. If someone could spoof that they're not somewhere that they actually are, or they could say they're in another location that they're not, that's a problem.
Well. So I got a question here from Owned, but I think about that from a insider threat perspective. Hey, I stopped here. I delivered this. Meanwhile, I'm on a completely different port, and I'm stealing all your shit, and I'm gonna sell it, and make millions of dollars because you left me with a bunch of TVs, and I'm just gonna get rid of your shit and not care. So I think about it from that perspective, but at the same time, if that wasn't in play, right? Let's put this into a perspective of the old days. Before technology, if you had gold, silver, whatever to deliver, you just hoped it got there. Just it was on a whim. Do you think people would be more or less honest if those tracking systems weren't there? If it was based on you're an adult, do what's right. I know we're getting into morality and it's not cybersecurity, but I'm thinking about this from all avenues of if that shit were to die, what would actually happen? Do you think people would be more likely to be like, you know what, they're treating me like an adult, and I'm gonna go do my job and I'm gonna do it right, versus this motherfucker, he's tracking me everywhere. So you know what? Screw it. I'm gonna spoof this. I'm gonna go sell some shit and make more money. Like, where do you think it would differ? Do you think that it matters truly? Because if you can spoof it, it's the same as not tracking it at all.
Yeah, from that side of it, yeah, I mean, it's really no different than what it used to be. I mean, and even, I mean, piracy still exists, right? There's still pirates, right? It's a little different than it was a long time ago, but I mean, it still is a thing, right? So yeah, I don't think it's that much different. Not much has changed. It's just got more advanced.
And that's kind of what I'm getting at, right? We keep coming out with all these advancements. We keep doing all these things. Like, oh, I could track all this. Yeah, cool, great. But your shipping containers are now on 3 different ships. Good luck finding them. Good luck getting your shit back. Like, I just look at it from a concept of our advancements in certain technological stacks just really makes no difference. I think to an extent of import, did this boat get from A to Z? And I know my people are alive. Like, yes, great, that's phenomenal. But in terms of, did my shipment make it from A to Z? Well, now that's a different question. And does that really matter? I can't, but again, this comes down to me caring more about people than I do about things. Like, if your shit didn't make it and you lost $500 million, I don't fucking care. You're probably a multi-billion-dollar company. Okay, sucks to be you. You'll make it up in the next one. But from a concept of people, as long as your people are alive, that's where I care. That's what matters to me, not the cargo. Like, and I think too much of this is too much of the merchant side relies around cargo and not the people. Personally, I think it's did cargo make it from A to B? Yeah, cool. Yeah, but you lost 5 people along the way to pirates. We don't fucking care. See, that's a problem. That's an issue. But that's just me. But we do have a question here from Owned, and we're gonna put it up. So, is there something like the in-flight Wi-Fi system that could be used for the network connection on ships? I'm assuming it's along the lines of the low Earth orbit tech. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there is, and most in-flight Wi-Fi it traditionally was some kind of SATCOM previously. Now it's more low Earth orbit than it was, and there's a lot more things that they have. So Starlink specifically has changed the game with this. Just to
before
blunt.
Starlink, it was all mid to high Earth orbit, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, and it was the bandwidth, and it wasn't just the latency, the bandwidth; it was the cost of it.
Yeah,
Is that it was not
because it's
cost
fucking
effective.
ridiculous.
It was ridiculous. It still is. And so with low Earth orbit, I mean, I'll just give you an example of this particular. When they designed the ship, it was back in like 2018. So we were told, hey, it's going to have to be SATCOM. You're looking at maybe 1.5 megabits per second down and up. With latency, I think it ended up like 300, 400 milliseconds, like something crazy out there. And that was what we designed for. The actual first cruise they did, they had Starlink the entire time, which was phenomenal. 150 megabits down, up, and then the latency, the highest latency we saw was 72 milliseconds for a ship floating in the ocean.
That's crazy, utterly crazy.
So it's game changing, but it's not on every ship, and it's not readily available everywhere yet.
So, with that, do you think that's playing a role in the security of maritime cyber? Not having that low Earth orbit, not having the latency and bandwidth that we really need to secure these ships.
Absolutely, it's been an issue, right? It's been a problem for a long time. Even Coast Guard used to just look at it externally. Right? They've gotten to the point where they're looking at internal to the vessels themselves, but most of it was just situational awareness around it.
So if somebody were wanting to get into maritime cyber, would you recommend more the Navy side or civilian side to really find a path into defending our seas, defending the boats, defending everything we have out there?
They're both very different. I think there's more opportunity to be had on the merchant side than there is. I mean, obviously Navy, yes, you can go, and Coast Guard, you can go and learn and work your way up, right? And you're going to learn a lot that will then translate over to the merchant side, right? Navy and Coast Guard have been doing some of this for a while, where some of that then comes over to the merchant side. I think with the advent of low Earth orbit being more widely available, then the evolution of cybersecurity in the merchant side will be able to evolve faster than it did in the past.
Though I agree, I think the merchant and civilian side has its ends. I disagree in the fact that, and again, this is just coming from an understanding of knowledge, education, training, and what people can bring to the table. In my heart, I believe that going into the Coast Guard or Navy would be the only true way to learn that aspect of things firsthand.
I don't disagree.
And again, only because if you try to get into it from a civilian side, you'd have to kind of go your route, find a contract that happens to support maritime, versus actually supporting maritime. And I think that's where my differentiation comes in, because I don't believe there's very many. And again, it's just me based on what I've seen online, not actually searching, just scrolling and what I've seen visibly. Many jobs come around of like, oh, hey, support X, Y, and Z for maritime cyber, whether it's a certain merchant vessel company or shipping company or what have you. I just haven't seen it. I think they
Yeah,
deal more with your brand of, let's take this contract and do the job. You know what I mean?
yeah, you're going to learn what you do. What you are going to get is you're going to get that knowledge of not just cyber, but what it means, like what really is maritime. What you're not going to get, you could get some of it, but on the commercial merchant side of things, you get to be a little more creative. You get to solve the problem in potentially different ways than you potentially going to be forced to solve the problem in the government sector. Um, and so you potentially have a little more flexibility in how you address it. Now, if you're new to the industry, yeah, it's not, you probably want to get your feet wet differently than I want to go solve a cool problem and not have any experience, right?
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I think that's what you mean. If you're getting it fresh, getting into it, and you want that maritime experience and that really good cyber experience, yeah, Navy, Coast Guard are going to be two areas that are going to be hard to beat.
Yeah, and that's where again, I think from a experience standpoint, from getting your hands dirty, I just think it'd be very difficult to get into it right away from the civilian sector. But that's not to say you can't. And we're going to get into that in a little bit on how they can break into the maritime cyber and do things and kind of work with you and your company, your industry, and what you do. Because me personally, I've never dealt with maritime cyber. Hospitals, PCI, and things like that. Yeah, all day. I've dealt with power and energy. You name it, I can help you. But maritime, I've never dealt with an organization that deals with that. So that's where you're going to come in. But I do have a question from Jack. Besides maritime, do we really need to be looking at GPS hardening? Does it really, really need to happen?
Yes.
Why?
So I kind of hinted at it, and I don't have enough specifics, so I'm not going to act like I know enough specifics about actually how to harden GPS. But the part that is really concerning to me is the fact that space, which is where satellites exist, it is not considered a critical asset. Space assets are not considered critical assets. How does GPS function without those critical assets?
GPS is huge.
Yeah, it's
GPS
massive.
monitors everything.
Even ports, right? Your timing of cranes, your timing of how things are coming in to the port and leaving. It's not just the vessel itself where the vessel is. It's other aspects of it too. So
I think GPS plays a bigger role. So Jack um, made it a little bit more clear. Should we really be looking at GPS systems in general, since it can control so much with it? And again, to your point, yeah, I think GPS is huge. I think GPS is one of those things that we don't give enough credit to, because of the fact that if you look at your phones always have a GPS system on them. Now, unless you're smart enough to be able to turn them off. And all right, let me restate that. Unless you have enough knowledge on how to disable GPS completely for your phone, which, let's be honest, is impossible these days. You can't. Between triangulation, your Wi-Fi, your GPS, there are so many things that play a factor into your location that disabling it completely is nigh on impossible, especially because you can't remove batteries anymore, which means it still maintains a location. So if somebody wanted to find you or locate where that device was, they can't, no matter what state it's in, because I can no longer pull the battery and let the CMOS die. It is now permanent. The only way to truly hide yourself, leave it at home. That's the only way. You can't. Good luck from an Android and an iPhone. Good luck pulling the battery, because it doesn't exist at all.
yeah,
Putin is threatening to take out all GPS satellites. I don't care about Putin. That's not what the show is about. Farm equipment, yes, it has all GPS. Anonymous, of course, coming in with the cloud. Got to go off grid, which is the digital equivalent of streaking through the quad to the gymnasium. Look, dude, if I didn't have kids, I would go off grid completely. I would have a fire pit, fireplace. I would have a log cabin in the woods with nothing else. No power, no nothing. I would go find a way to buy a quad and nobody else would know if I didn't have kids. But I got 5 kids and they need technology because they got friends and a school that they need. Apparently, kids need to learn and be fed these days. I'm just saying, and I'm not smart enough to teach them because I'm not that. I'm smart, but I'm not a teacher. My kids would hate me.
That's funny.
But yeah, so a lot of things happening. We're 9 minutes to the top of the hour. So I want you to give 2 pieces of advice. One to those advanced in their careers of how if they really enjoyed maritime cyber, or if they wanted to get into it, how they would. Actually, 3 pieces of advice. One to juniors on how to break into cyber and the maritime industry. And the third is how to break into cyber in general. Because you know as well as I do, the show is all about anybody getting into cybersecurity. So those 3 things: experience getting into maritime, junior getting into maritime, and junior getting into cybersecurity in general.
So I'll start with experience because I think it's pretty short to the point. 2 things is anything that you think you know when you're going into maritime, don't assume it's right. Right? Go in and be willing to listen to other people around you. Be willing to look at a problem differently and listen to those that are in the industry already. And when I say in the industry, I don't mean maritime cyber, but in maritime itself. Listen to what their concerns are and then try to solve a hard problem. For juniors looking to get into maritime specifically, I think we kind of went into that of Navy and Coast Guard are a great way. It's not much different than the rest of cybersecurity, other than there are limitations and understanding. And if you're learning cyber and you also want to learn maritime, just learn about the maritime transportation system. Like, what does that mean? What does it do? How do those pieces fit together? And you might find that you have a interest not just in cyber, but a specific part of that system. You might have an interest in crane operation. You might have an interest in the vessel itself, right? There's probably something in that industry that you gravitate to that has cyber component to it. Just entering the industry itself, it's a large industry, right? I know you talk about that every week. It's a massive industry. There's not just one area you can get into. And it's more or less, if you don't know, right, just keep learning, right? Don't be afraid to ask questions. And this goes back to those that are experienced, right? There's always knowledge that we can gain from each other, right? Whether I'm a expert in the field, which I don't like that term, or someone just getting in the field, right? You always can learn and level up with one another. Everyone has knowledge that they can share, and I can learn from a tier 1, so to speak, just as much as I could learn from a tier 3. And if you do that, right, you level up, right? You both level up. And so if you're a tier 1 or trying to get into it, talk to the tier 3s. Don't be afraid, right? You may have an idea they never thought of. Same thing with tier 3s. Don't take a tier 1 or a junior their advice as if it's worth nothing.
So with all that being said, because all of it is valid, all of it is true. Do you have any final words before we sign off?
No.
Because you got them all out. I think you got them all. I think you said it all. So that's why I asked. Like anything else you want to get off your chest before we sign off for the evening?
No. I think the only thing I would say is whatever field you're in currently, if you're looking to get into the to cyber, continue, right? You'll hear things of, yeah, there's not enough, and then you'll see layoffs. Don't focus on that. Don't focus on the symptoms of the industry. Dive in, learn, keep learning, ask questions, and you'll find out the industry is a little bit smaller than you really think it is.
So with all that being said, look, I love you all. You're all my warriors. You're all my family. The biggest thing I can take from this is we need people in every area, every avenue of cybersecurity, whether it's maritime, power and energy, gas, you name it. We need you. Medical field. I don't care where you're at. We need you. So if you're trying to break in and network, talk to people, figure it out. Space is another one because that's becoming huge. We're trying to land on the moon again in like a week or two. I don't even remember what it was. I know we're in another space race. So they're trying to land on the moon again. So just keep digging, keep driving, keep up with everything because you can make it. There's always a space for you. If I can't hire you, if Brad can't hire you, somebody will. Do not give up. There is always a place for you, no matter who you are. I don't care what you look like. I don't care what you believe. I don't care what you do. If you care about protecting people, protecting networks, protecting data, that's what matters to the majority of the industry. So do it. Find the job, find the people for you, and you will make it. Now, otherwise, this has been another amazing episode, as always, Security Happy Hour. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, share, all those fun things. And I promise we'll see you next week. I got Eliza from the UK. We go in across the pond next week. It'll be at the same time. I don't know how. She said she'll be here. So we got Eliza coming on next week for another amazing episode, Security Happy Hour. So I'll see you then. Y'all take care. I love you. Be safe and enjoy your weekend.